Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn about IELTS writing task 1. Our task 1 is going to be based on a diagram. Now, before we begin this lesson, I would like to give you some information about IELTS writing task 1. The first thing that is important to remember is that you get 20 minutes to write your task 1. You should write more than 150 words. Your task 1 is worth about 33% of your total writing marks. You will be marked on task achievement, coherence and cohesion, vocabulary, and grammar. Now, when it comes to writing task 1, the general training students write a letter. However, the academic students are required to write a report, and the report could be on a bar chart, a line graph, a pie chart, a table, a map, or a diagram, as we are going to look at in this lesson. Now, if you're interested in knowing how to write a report based on the rest of them, a bar chart, a line graph, a pie chart, a table, a map, have a look at my playlist on writing task 1 and you will find an essay that I have written about each one of those charts. Now, let's get into our lesson, and before we do that, have you subscribed to the channel? Now, what are you waiting for if you haven't subscribed yet? Subscribe to this channel and I promise you, you will not regret it. This is because on my channel, I have all sorts of videos that are going to really help you to improve your level of English. I have videos about IELTS writing task 1 and task 2. I also have videos on IELTS speaking part 1, part 2 and part 3, and plenty of video on vocabulary, grammar, all the tenses, phrasal verbs if that's what you're looking for. But that's not all. On my channel, I have videos that are going to help you to speak English in different situations. Do you want to go shopping and you're not very confident in English? You don't know what to say? I have a video for you. Are you going to the airport and you're not very confident of what is said there? I have a video about that as well. I have videos that will help you to speak English in so many situations. So once you have watched this video, have a look at my playlists. Have a look at the rest of my videos, especially the older videos. You will find so many helpful videos. Now, let's get into our question. The most important thing once you get your IELTS writing task 1 is to read the question. Read the question and make sure that you understand it. Once you have read the question, then the other thing that you need to do is make sure that you understand the diagram. In our case, we're told the diagram on the left shows how the water cycle works. The diagram on the left shows how the water cycle works. Now, from that information, you can tell that this diagram is going to be talking about how the water cycle works. Once you have read that piece, then look at the diagram, and the first thing you should ask yourself is, where does this process begin and where does it end? So you can see it starts with the sun's heat that causes evaporation. I would write that as number 1. I would just put number 1 there. Okay? And then after that, you can see that the vapor starts rising as a result of the wind. Okay, invisible water vapor, it starts going up. Okay, evaporation from the sea. So I would put my second step there. And then vapor cools, forming clouds. I would put that as number 3. And then clouds cool further, causing rain. I would put number 4 there. Okay, and then you have groundwater flows into lakes and rivers. Okay, I would put that as my 5th step. And then water carried downstream by river. Okay, and river flows into the sea, I would put as my last step. So it is very important that you identify, first of all, where does the process begin and where does the process end. That is extremely important. Now, in this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to write body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. In the previous video, I taught you how to write the introduction and the overview. So if you want to have a complete essay, then I recommend that you watch the first video on how to write the introduction and the overview, and then you watch this video on how to write the rest of the essay, which is body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. Remember, when it comes to writing task 1, you should write only 4 paragraphs. You have 20 minutes. It's not a lot of time. So stick to 4 paragraphs. Write your introduction, write your overview, and then get straight into body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. Now, how do you write body paragraph 2? Once you have written your introduction and the overview, the next thing that you want to ask yourself when it comes to body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3 is, do you understand the process? Because in body paragraph 2, you should start describing the first steps of the process, okay? You need to describe the first steps of the process. So if you identified 6 steps on how this water cycle works, describe the first 3 in body paragraph 2, and then describe the rest of the steps in body paragraph 3. Because in body paragraph 2 and in body paragraph 3, that is where you describe the steps of the process in details. So split your steps into 2. The first steps describe in body paragraph 2 and the rest of the steps describe in body paragraph 3. Now, when we look at this diagram, it's showing how the water cycle works, and it all begins with the sun, okay? It all begins with the sun that heats up water that is in lakes, rivers, and seas, okay? And that, as a result of that, it turns into water vapor. But it's not just, evaporation is not just as a result of the heating of the lakes, rivers, and the seas. We also have another form of, or another source of evaporation, okay? So when we look at this diagram, we have 2 sources of evaporation. On the one hand, we have lakes, rivers, and seas, and on the other hand, we have the trees, transpiration from trees, okay? So the first paragraph should be based about the first few steps. So we will mention the sun, we will mention the rivers, the lakes, and the seas, but we will also mention transpiration, because from both of those we get water vapor, okay? So the water vapor is not only from the lakes, rivers, and the seas, but also from the trees, okay? Now, once we have established that, then we begin writing our body paragraph 2. The water cycle begins with evaporation. After water absorbs heat energy from the sun and turns into vapors. Okay? So that is really the first step. The water cycle begins with evaporation. After water absorbs heat energy from the sun and turns into vapors. So at that point, we have not identified where the source of water is. Okay? We have simply pointed out the first step, that the water cycle begins or starts with evaporation. After water absorbs heat energy from the sun and turns into vapors. So we have 2 steps there. Evaporation. No, we actually have 3 steps. We have the sun heating the water, okay? And then as a result of that, evaporation takes place. And after that, we have water vapors. And then once you have written that, that is our topic sentence. The water cycle begins with evaporation after water absorbs heat energy from the sun and turns into vapors. So after that, we are going to elaborate further. We are going to explain where does this water come from. And as we saw, the water vapors are not just from the lakes, rivers, and the seas. They also come from trees. So let's first of all begin with the lakes, the rivers, and the seas. So water bodies like the lakes, rivers, and seas are the main source of evaporation. So most of the evaporation happens from the lakes, the rivers, and the seas when the sun, when the sun heats them up. When the sun heats them up, evaporation takes place, and that is where it happens the most. The water bodies like lakes, rivers, and seas are the main source of evaporation. But that's not the only source. We also have transpiration, so then you have to write about that also. Trees do also play an important part in the water cycle through transpiration, as the roots absorb water and push it towards the leaves as water vapor. So we also have trees. They play an important role in the water cycle. So it's not just the lakes, the rivers, and the seas. The trees also play an important part in the water cycle through transpiration. And what is transpiration? This is when the roots of the trees absorb water and they push it towards the leaves as water vapor. So we have water vapor from 2 sources. The largest source is the lakes, rivers, and the seas. And the second source is trees as they transpire, which means the roots absorb water and then they push it towards the leaves as water vapor. So that is what we write in body paragraph 2. We are explaining the first step in the water cycle, and that is evaporation. Evaporation meaning the sun heats up the water, so the water bodies like the lakes, rivers, and seas, and as a result of that we have evaporation, and which turns into vapors. But also we have another source of evaporation, and that is trees, according to our diagram. We have evaporation from the sea and we have transpiration from trees. So that is the first step. Now then you move on to body paragraph 3. In body paragraph 3 you continue describing the rest of the steps. So we have reached at transpiration from trees, and we already have water vapor from the main source, which is lakes, rivers, and seas, and we also have water vapor from the trees. then what happens next in the process? Due to strong winds, the water vapors rise up. Due to strong winds, the water vapors rise up into the atmosphere. Okay, you can see in our diagram, they are rising up. The water vapors rise up due to the strong winds. They rise up into the atmosphere. Okay, that is the sky, where they condense. Now, you can see in our diagram, we are told clouds cool further, causing rain. So the water vapors, they rise up into the atmosphere where they condense. To condense is to cool down, where they condense into water drops. Okay, so the water vapors, they condense into water drops that turn into clouds, which cool further, resulting into rainfall. So as you can see in our diagram, we have the wind, and then we have the clouds cooling further, and then we have the rain coming down. So that is the next step. So due to strong winds, the water vapors rise up into the atmosphere where they condense, they cool down into water drops that turn into clouds. And then the clouds, they cool further, resulting into rainfall. Okay, so we have described so far, right from body paragraph 2, we are describing step by step of the process. So we have now reached at the step where we have rainfall. So what do? We have to explain the rest of the part now. Okay, so this runoff of water, so we are talking about the rainfall. This runoff of water, so the rainfall that has just poured on the ground, it ends up in lakes, rivers, and seas. As you can see in our diagram, we're told groundwater flows into lakes, rivers, and seas. Okay, so this runoff of water, which is rain that has fallen on the ground, it ends up in lakes, rivers, and seas. So we have nailed the second step. Now we move on to the next step. It doesn't end there, okay? Because we have porous rocks and we have non-porous rocks. So we also have to touch on that. Now, some of it is infiltrated into the ground. Infiltrated means that the water is sipped, it seeps through into the ground, okay? It trickles into the ground. Some of it is infiltrated into the ground through porous rocks, okay? Porous rocks, it means that they have some, they let the water through, okay? So some of it is infiltrated into the ground through porous rocks, a process which makes it pure and drinkable. Okay, some of it is infiltrated into the ground through porous rocks, a process which makes it pure and drinkable. Now, when you look at the last part, we have talked about the last step where some of the water that has come from the rainfall, it filters through into the ground through the porous rocks, a process which makes it pure and drinkable. That is the water that we drink, okay? The water that we drink is the water that has been filtered through into the ground through the porous rocks. And after that, the process begins all over again, as we pointed out in the overview. We don't want to repeat that again, okay? So we have described the water cycle from the very, very, very beginning, where it starts with evaporation after water, after the sun heats up the water from the lakes, rivers, and seas, okay, and turns the water into vapors, okay? But that's not all. We also have water vapors from trees through transpiration as the roots absorb water and then they push it towards the leaves. And then what happens with these water vapors? Due to strong winds, they rise up into the atmosphere, okay, where they cool down into water drops. They condense, they cool down into water droplets that turn into clouds, and then these clouds, they cool further, resulting into rainfall. And then what happens with the rainfall? That runoff of water, which is rainfall, it ends up back in the lakes, rivers, and seas. And some of it is infiltrated into the ground. It seeps through into the ground through the porous rocks, a process which makes it pure and drinkable. And then after that, the process starts all over again. So you have to explain all the steps in body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. Begin body paragraph 2 with the first few steps. And then after that, in body paragraph 3, describe the rest of the steps. So the secret of knowing what to put in body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3 is, first of all, identify all your steps. And then divide your steps into 2. Describe the first few steps in body paragraph 2 and then describe the rest of the steps in body paragraph 3. Okay? So that is really how you write your body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. Now, the other thing that is important that I would like to remind you is that when it comes to your writing task 1, as we saw earlier on, you need to make sure that you're responding to the question fully. That means you have to describe the whole process in details, step by step, okay? Now, the other thing that is important is that you need the vocabulary to talk about the topic that the diagram is based on. In this essay, I have underlined for you all the vocabulary that you need to describe this diagram. We have words such as evaporation, absorbs heat energy, vapors, water bodies, main source, important role, okay? Then we have transpiration, absorb water, push it towards the leaves, water vapor, strong winds, rise up into the atmosphere, condense, water droplets, turn into, cool further, resulting into rainfall, this runoff, ends up in lakes, is infiltrated, a process, pure and drinkable. You have all the vocabulary that you need to be able to describe this particular diagram. The other thing that is important is you ensure that you write in the correct grammar, okay? Make sure your tenses are correct, okay? As you can see, you are describing, so you tend to use verbs in the present tense. The water cycle begins, the verb begins, okay? All right, absorbs, okay? And then you have play. So we are writing this essay in the present tense, okay? The water vapors rise up where they condense, okay? We are using the present tense. Now, if you found this essay helpful, if you found this lesson helpful, then please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and share this video on all your social media platforms. Let other people also benefit from this essay. Remember, sharing is caring. I shared this video with you, so share the video with other people as well. And remember, if you want to have the complete essay, then watch the first part of this essay, and that is how to write the introduction and the overview. That video I have already uploaded. Now, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in our next lesson. I will be uploading more videos on IELTS Writing Task 1, IELTS Writing Task 2, IELTS Speaking Part 1, and cue cards on Part 2 and Part 3. So look out for those videos. So turn your notification button on so that you know exactly when I have uploaded a new video. Now, thank you very much, everybody, and see you in our next lesson. Bye bye.